But guess what? The most 2020 thing that could happen continues in 2021. Why? Because the Browns are going to be there too. Coming up on the Ravens post show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ravens post show. I am Brian H. Waters. This show, of course, is brought to you by Haps News. The Baltimore Ravens have got it done. They are going to the playoffs. And, this is one of the fun weeks in the NFL as I'm watching. I got the Dallas Cowboys game as they're fighting, and CeeDee Lamb just dropped the ball. But, enough about that. The Ravens going to the playoffs is something that didn't look promising when you go back about 6 to 8 weeks ago. The Ravens had this stretch where, all right, they came out this season since Cleveland, they blew them out. Then they went down to Houston, blew them out, and then they had the heavyweight matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs in Baltimore on Monday night. And what happened? Boom, the Ravens lost. Then it was like, okay, they had to get themselves together. So they they bounced back. I believe it was it might have been Cincinnati or somebody. Yeah, I believe it was Cincinnati. But nonetheless, they went on. They faced Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, they lost. I kept saying earlier in the season, Lamar Jackson did not look like himself. Things just didn't. He came last year. He ended on such a high note. Looked like he was having so much fun. I did not see that at the beginning of this year. Well, they lost to Pittsburgh. Okay, cool. Then they would lose to New England. They beat the Colts, but they were losing to New England, Tennessee, Pittsburgh. And the season just looked bad, honestly. Now, the Pittsburgh lost the second one. You look at it like, okay, Lamar was out with COVID-19, unfortunately. The game got moved around. It was supposed to be on Thanksgiving night. The Ravens were already having their issues. So it just looked like a lot of things just wasn't going their way. And, I told people, I said, look, this isn't your typical Ravens team, but things just didn't look right. And I will admit, I gave up, and Dallas just threw an interception, so that'll do it for their season. The Giants have a chance to win the division. But I said that, things just didn't look right. Well, the Ravens had to have a matchup where they kind of got their swag back, right? Like I said, now, when they lost to Pittsburgh, they came close. They almost won that game. RG3 gets hurt. Trace McSorley has to come in. And so it was just so many moving parts. Well, things kind of get back in order. They go against Dallas on a Tuesday night, I believe. They beat them. Then, they started getting themselves together, picking up wins over Dallas. They had a huge matchup with the Cleveland Browns to get back the greatest game in Ravens franchise history. If you're not a Ravens fan, what I mean by that is it was fun to watch. That was a Ravens game that was fun for everybody to watch, but definitely the game of the year. Then you had them take on the New York Giants. Cool, they beat them. The Jacksonville Jaguars beat them. So all this stuff going on, and it's like, okay, finally they getting themselves together. And some people said, look, I'm not going to give them too much hype for beating these teams. But when you look at a team, the way that team was playing, if you look at a team like that, they needed those matchups. They're still NFL teams. They needed a matchup with the Dallas Cowboys, who had a prolific running back in Zeke, right? You still got to give Zeke credit. So they went out there, did their thing. They needed a win like that. Then, all right, Jacksonville, maybe not, but the Cleveland win was the one that kind of defined who the Ravens are. It kind of lets you know, okay, this is what we're going to be faced up against, right? So for them to go out there and win that game, it kind of looked as if, things are starting to get back in order. And today, with everything on the line, all things on the line, they just needed to win and get in. Like a couple weeks ago, my good friends, Ashley Baker and Mark Gunnels. They were on Ashley's show on About Nothing But Sports. And Mark was like, Brian, get in the playoffs first. Just get in the playoffs first. And guess what? Mark, they're in the playoffs, and they are a team. The way they're playing, the way they're firing on all cylinders, you see they're getting in their rhythm. They're a dangerous team, But let's go to the highlights today. So I mentioned the Bengals, right? Go back a few years ago. Ravens fans remember this. New Year's Eve, Bengals, boom. They scored a touchdown, 44 seconds left. In this game, I want people to remember, the Bengals, just like today, had nothing to play for. Nothing to play for. This was the season in which the Ravens would go ahead and later on the next year draft Lamar Jackson. But this right here, this throwback right here was what got the Bills in the playoffs. And the Bengals tweeted this, gave the handshake to the Bills. So this was the Bills' first time getting in the playoffs in quite a few years. So this was one of the memorable moments. But the Ravens today, they wasn't having that. We go to Miles Boykin first. Lamar Jackson. I tweeted right here. I don't want to hear nothing about Lamar can't throw. Watch this pass. Just drops it, dimes right in, down the line. Touchdown, Ravens. I believe that was the first touchdown of the game, right? But you know what? Lamar's passive was on point. He almost had one in Hollywood earlier. I said this. Hollywood has a tendency to drop a pass, but then he'll make up for it later. Right here with two in the second quarter, 4:26 left. To put the Ravens up 17-0. But that would not be it for Hollywood Brown. I guess we can call him Hollywood again, because right here, first and goal, 24-3, Ravens up in the third. He finds them in the back of the end zone. So that was huge right there. Lamar Jackson finding Hollywood Brown. But you know what? The Ravens had over 400 yards rushing. No, that was not a mistake. Over 400 yards rushing today. And you got to include J.K. Dobbins. When this guy was drafted, this is his first touchdown. Up the middle, in there, end zone. He would go ahead, and today he set the rookie record. He broke it last week, but he set the new rookie record for a Ravens running back. But let's go right here. This is right here the killer. This is going to end, pretty much put the game away, but let you know we're running right into the playoffs, and we mean business. As he takes it to the house. Like I said, people was like, why did the Ravens draft him? That's what people were saying. Why did they draft him? Well, quite frankly, they drafted him because they knew they needed a running back. And granted, last year, the run game, you had Mark Ingram and Gus the Bus Edwards, but still, you could never have too many running backs. Look what happened. Mark Ingram got hurt this year. So that was important. And then Lamar Jackson, folks. Lamar Jackson just getting it done today, becoming the first quarterback in NFL history. Here's a run. Remember what he did last year against Cincinnati when he made them look silly. It was one of his best runs of the season. But today he would go ahead and set the new record as becoming the only quarterback to rush back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And this is the play right here. Third quarter, 8 minutes left. Lamar goes to the right and out of bounds, and there it is. Lamar Jackson over 1,000 yards today. The Ravens get it done. And they're going to the playoffs. It's that simple. They are going to the playoffs, as you see him and J.K. Dobbins dancing. So I'm excited. I think this is going to be good. If you guys watching on Haps News, go ahead, jump in the chat. And also tweet me at Brian H. Waters, but make sure you download the Haps News app where you could jump in the conversation. But yeah, the Ravens getting it done today, and I'm really excited. I think they got the wins that they needed. They're going in 11-5. Look, a win is a win. That means momentum, folks. It means momentum. Yeah, they beat bad teams, but that's what you're supposed to do. More than likely, as the playoffs get set, they will more than likely be taking on the Tennessee Titans. So what would that mean? I said that they were going to face a team in which they was going to strike vengeance. And we know history will tell you that when the Ravens go to Tennessee in the playoffs, usually Tennessee, the 2 times before, Tennessee was favored, but the Ravens got it done. Now, when Tennessee came to Baltimore, Baltimore was favored and Tennessee got it done. So hopefully that trend continues. If you're a Ravens fan like me, hopefully that trend continues this year. You know, Lamar Jackson has been hearing all the talk. Oh, Lamar can't get it done in the playoffs. This regular season is nice. Well, guess what? Peyton Manning had the same issues, right? A lot of great players, unfortunately, not all of them, but there has been quite a few great players. Remember, Tony Romo couldn't get a win for his life to save his life, and you know he ended his career with two, but 2 playoff wins, that is. And Dak Prescott, I believe, has already matched him, or maybe he just has one. So I'm looking to see what happens here as the Ravens and then the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are going to the playoffs. What's going to be so interesting about that is they're going right up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you know, maybe Pittsburgh probably should have put them away today. And I say that because the Browns are a team who have found ways to win games. They're 11-5, just like the Ravens. The Ravens had the tiebreaker, but they've found ways to win. And who knows, that could be a dangerous matchup. Folks, we could be getting a rematch of all rematches. Just putting it out there. You could see the Ravens and the Browns in the AFC Championship. The way the seeding falls. Now, that would mean the Browns will have to beat the Chiefs. The Ravens will have to beat more than likely will have to beat the Titans and probably the Bills. But guess what? If you're going to win this and you're going to go to the playoffs and you want to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have to beat good teams. The last time they did, they had to face the 3 best quarterbacks in the league. Rookie Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady. And then they had to go against a prolific quarterback in Colin Kaepernick. So in order to win the Super Bowls, you got to do that. The first time, I ain't gonna say it was easier, but the defense was like one of those defenses that you knew nobody could beat them. And after a while, when they hit that stride that year, it was a wrap. So we'll see. Will this Ravens team hit their stride? That's what I'm looking to see. Shout out to Mark Goldman tuning in on Haps. So like I said, join the Haps app. Get the Haps app if you don't have it. It's absolutely free and it's easy to comment. And appreciate everybody watching on Facebook, but I can put your comments on the screen like I'm about to do with Mark's. And he says, surprised my Steelers made a game of it under the circumstances. Mark, I mentioned, I thought the Steelers, I understand not playing everybody at all, but maybe they might want to put Cleveland away. I don't know. I just kind of feel like maybe you would have wanted to put the Browns away that way. And thank you for the gift, the New Year award, Mark. I appreciate that. If you put them away now, you don't have to face them later because this could be a dangerous matchup. I think that could be looking like it could be the game of the week next week. Cleveland and Pittsburgh. That's going to be a fun one to watch. You got 2 teams that absolutely hate each other. One of the things they said on the broadcast today was, and the Titans have clinched. So the Dolphins are on the verge of elimination. But one of the things that they brought up on the broadcast today was the fact that there won't be home field advantage, right? So, dang, the Buffalo Bills put up 56 against the Dolphins. There won't be any home field advantages, not the way it was before, because you're not going to have the capacity crowds. So, even though some of them may have crowds, they're not going to be at capacity. So, for the Ravens fans, this could be great. You know why? Because you're going to have a guy like Lamar Jackson who can kind of hear his he can kind of communicate better with his coaches and his offensive linemen. So that could very well play into their advantage. I mean, it's the playoffs. It's different, no doubt about it. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah, and Mark says good point about the Browns and the Steelers. But the playoffs are looking real different. They're looking real different. You got your staples in your Steelers, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. I mean, do you call this? I wouldn't necessarily say Chiefs are staple. Maybe so because they've gotten there in the past decade or 2 decades, they got there with 3 different quarterbacks, right? But the Steelers, you can almost pencil them in for the playoffs every year. But, you got the Browns coming in for the first time since 2002. They're coming to the party. You got the Buffalo Bills. They're coming back. And then, Indianapolis, they win and they're in. I don't see them losing to Jacksonville. Miami, unfortunately, fell short, so they won't be in. So, and Houston, Tennessee, they're in there. Tennessee could. Well, I guess we can't really pencil the Ravens and Titans in, even though I don't see Tennessee losing to Houston, but that doesn't mean nothing. If Tennessee does beat Houston, then if they do lose to Houston, then it's the Ravens and the Colts, and then Tennessee and Buffalo. So it's so many matchups. And do the Ravens want to play the Colts? They played them before. So, sometimes when you lose, you tend to be a little bit more on edge after that loss because you want to make sure you come out and give your best. That's the reason why I know the Steelers didn't want to see the Ravens. That was my pick. Steelers, Ravens in the first round. Ravens will beat them, but clearly that's not going to happen. I will say this. I am sticking with my preseason pick, and that being the Ravens and the Seahawks. Even though I was playing Madden and through simulation, I'm obviously the Ravens and I'm playing those games, but through simulation, had to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I kind of got a gut feeling that Tom Brady is going to make history and host the Super Bowl. So who knows? I'll make official predictions this Thursday on Ashley Baker's show. That'll be my official predictions if the conversation leads that way. So, yeah, but Ravens getting it done. They are going to the playoffs. This is good. This is great for Baltimore. 3 years in a row. Under the Lamar Jackson era, 3 years in a row. It reminds you when the Joe Flacco era started. Boom, they was in the playoffs for the first 5 years. Was it 5 or 4? Maybe 4. For the Ravens, though, they didn't they won every year. That was the difference. The first year, they got to the AFC title game. The second year, they was out in the divisional round. Third year, divisional round. Yeah, 5 years. And the third and the fourth year, they went to the third year AFC title, and then fifth year, obviously, winning the Super Bowl. So they want to change things here. With Joe Flacco, with Lamar Jackson, they got into the playoffs the first year. They won that in week 17 when they beat Cleveland. And had broke Pittsburgh's hearts. They got to the playoffs. They lost in the first round. They faced the Chargers team that had just seen them recently, and they were able to make the adjustments. Then they played last year. They steamrolled into the playoffs, 14-2, and then they lost, obviously, in the divisional round against Tennessee. So that's the thing that's going to be interesting this year. What's going to happen? For Baltimore fans, the playoffs isn't enough. You can make a bunch of excuses about this year, with COVID happened and the Ravens kind of being, up and down. But we obviously, the Ravens fans know what needs to be addressed in the offseason. But one thing, when you watch this team does look like a team that can win it all because they can run the ball. And Lamar's passes was on point today. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Willie Snead as he sat out today with an ankle injury. And maybe this is what the Ravens needed. Maybe because last year they rested their starters. They had a 2-week break, and I was one who understood it, but everybody kept telling me, you don't rush starters. You shouldn't do that, this, that, and the other. So, the couch coaches said, no, that doesn't make any sense. Well, guess who's resting their starters this week? Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So Mahomes sitting on the sideline. We'll see what happens. They're the only team with a bye, especially with this new playoff format. If you're a Ravens fan, you feel good. The Ravens got the top wild card seat, so it means they would have been in either way. But Tennessee or Indy probably wouldn't have been in the playoffs either way because they would have been probably the team on the out. So, but I'm going to wrap things up, folks, as I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in to the Haps News, the main event sports show, Ravens post show, as the Ravens are back in the playoffs, 3rd year in a row. Let's see what happens. Can they go all the way to Tampa? Can they get it done this time? Lamar Jackson, third time's the charm, right? He needs to get that first playoff victory under his belt as we sit back and await who will be their opponents coming up next week. Until the next time, folks, I'm Brian H. Waters. Goodbye and good night.